Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Friday, May the 9th edition of our video devotionals. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope your Friday's going well. It is the end of another work week and school week. We've got Mother's Day this coming Sunday, and I hope all the mothers have a wonderful Mother's Day. And I know there's always a special emphasis at church, so hopefully all the mothers can attend church if possible. We're going to be in 2 Chronicles 16 today. And if you'll find that, we're just going to kind of summarize that chapter. It's not very lengthy. Verse 14, there's a couple of things we want to especially bring your attention. Otherwise, thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for all the comments and the acknowledgments. And we appreciate that very, very much. And if you think this could be of help to somebody, then share it with them. And I believe we'll do our best to try to be a blessing, okay? Thank you for the prayers for Christy's great aunt who's recovering from the hip replacement surgery. We appreciate that. Continue to pray for our revival. That will be next Sunday beginning and Monday and Tuesday, okay? And the next week we'll say maybe a little bit more about that. But anyway, thank you for the prayers. All right, so 2 Chronicles 16:1, it basically begins with the fact that, of course, we talked about Asa yesterday, so we're going to continue along this line. Asa, when he was confronted with this massive army of Ethiopians, he cried out to God and said, God, you're the one we need help from. You don't need a lot, and you certainly can help those who have no strength at all. So God intervenes and answers his prayer there, and that's a wonderful victory. So we get here to chapter 16, and the king of Israel decides that he's going to go up against Judah, the kingdom that Asa represents there. So he's all concerned, and then he says, well, I'm going to go get some help from Ben-Hadad, that's in verse 2, of Syria. So he takes some silver and gold out of the treasures of the Lord's house, and that's not really what I want to talk about, but that's a no-no there. But he ends up sending this to that king in Syria to get some help. So indeed, he gets the help from him. Then we get down here to verse number 7. At that time, Hanani the seer, that's like a prophet, but there's the title, seer, S-E-E-R, came to Asa, king of Judah, and said unto him, because thou hast relied on the king of Syria, and not relied on the Lord thy God, therefore is the host of the king of Syria escaped out of thine hand. So instead of, he's saying, look, these people that you depended upon, he says, they've left, and they're going to be a problem later on, which is what's going to happen later on. Then he says in verse 8, were not the Ethiopians and the Lubims a huge host? And he says, because thou didst rely on the Lord, he delivered them into thine hands. So let's just stop here. So instead of relying on the Lord at this point, he says, I'm going to get help from the king of Syria, which was not an ally, but because he gets silver and gold, he hired him somebody to help him. So the seer, the preacher, basically, the prophet said, you know what? That's no good. You should have relied on the Lord. That's not good. Then it says in verse number 9, for the eyes of the Lord run to and fro throughout the whole earth to show himself strong in the behalf of them whose heart is perfect toward him. People say, well, nobody's perfect. Well, the Bible says here, and I understand when we say that, what that means. I know we have a sinful nature still, even as children of God. But that being said, there's a place where a child of God should be based on the presence of the Lord in his life, the things we've learned. So there is such a thing as the Bible saying the Lord is looking for people whose heart is perfect toward him, who's right with God there. And he says, herein thou hast done foolishly, therefore from henceforth thou shalt have wars. So he created a bigger problem with more wars because he didn't depend on God in this situation. Then it says in verse 10, then Asa was wroth with the seer and put him in a prison house, for he was in a rage with him because of this thing. And Asa oppressed some of the people at the same time. Here's the sad thing. He gets mad at the preacher, so to speak. Now, I'm a preacher. Look, I've got thick skin. I guess it becomes thicker and thicker as the days go by. But let me just say this. When you represent the Lord, the same things you preach to the people, you're preaching to yourself, and we all need to grow and be what we need to be, and there's things we falter and fail in. But you know what? If God has brought something to our attention, then don't go after the preacher. You're doing one of the worst things you could ever do. I don't know of anybody that I know of in my lifetime, and anybody that I ever known as people, ahead of me, mothers and other grown-ups, where someone got mad at the preacher because the preacher was trying to do the right thing, but they got mad at the preacher and caused a bunch of problems or whatever. That's never good. Never good. Don't do that. And besides that, it says he started oppressing. So here's the thing. You get mad at God, and then you get mad at the preacher, then you get mad at everybody else. Basically, you're going through life mad at everybody. Everything is got a little bit of a taint to it. Anything can set you off, and I know we're all human. I get that, but let me tell you something. Better be careful, because the man of God said you should rely on Him. And when we try to do the right thing with God, and someone tells you that, whether it's the preacher or anybody, better be very, very careful getting mad at them. That's not a good thing. Then notice, lastly, this is sad. And Asa in the 39th year of his reign was diseased in his feet, until his disease was exceeding great. Yet in his disease he sought not to the Lord, but to the physicians. This is a touchy subject, I know this, but I'm going to tell you something. People have made gods out of the medical world. They've made gods out of physicians. And we need to go to God. Now, if God chooses to use a physician in the medical world, I get that, and He does. But we better be very careful when we put God second and the doctors first. Everything they say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then the preacher can say something via the Bible, and we question that. So there's some lessons here that we all need to learn. We need to be very careful. God first. And God will give us the answers, and God will lead us where we need to be at, and all of that. And God, sir, will give us the victory. So be careful relying on other people. We can rely on God, and God can use people. I'm not saying don't go to doctors. Good night in the morning. Doctors help people. But I'm going to tell you something. In this case, he says, I'm going to depend on the doctors to help me. And he didn't rely on the Lord, and that was not a good thing for him. So there's some good lessons here. So I hope you have a great day, safe day, healthy day, Lord willing. We'll be back on Monday, and we won't be using the word. I think we got one more week of the gospel. Yes, we do. One more, and then that'll be it for that. So have a great weekend and Sunday, and happy Mother's Day.